Welcome back to the ICLR. I'm going to start today's webinar. I'm really excited that Greg Johnson is able to join us today. And I thank everybody for being flexible to do a Friday Forum on a Monday. But we're trying to accommodate Greg's schedule being here in town and a chance to bring to you a whole new perspective, I would believe, on one of the issues that we'd like to come back to here, looking at tornadoes today. I was just reflecting, we did our first workshop as ICLR back in 90, and over the years we've got to now do quite a few of these. Quite excited about the range of different presentations, whether it's on tornadoes issues that we've had a chance to share with you. And Greg is going to take you through a perspective on storm chasing and on tornadoes that will be new. So Greg Johnson is one of North America's top professional storm chasers. I always thought it'd be really neat to get stopped at the border and say, what do you do for a living? So, storm chaser.
They always laugh.
There you go. Storm chaser is not the most common profession to have, but Greg has successfully not only done amazing work, but into a passion into his work. So he's going to share with you some of the photographs and images that he's been able to generate, and some of the work that Greg and his team coming out of Regina have done looking at tornadoes in Canada, the United States. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
Awesome. For me, being in a room full of giant brains, with all this knowledge is kind of interesting because my background is, I'm just going to give a little bit of my background. I have a political science degree. Don't laugh, okay? I got a political science degree. I'm a former hockey referee. And now I'm doing storm chasing, and so I come to this side of the world not from a background of science or meteorology or anything like that, but more so as a reporter. My world is documenting, filming, photographing catastrophic weather events. That's how I make my living. Through that experience, and part of the experience of getting to a tornado situation is being able to get to a tornado situation. I mean, we analyze a lot of data every year, but the reality is they're extremely elusive events. They're incredibly hard to study because we just don't know where they're going to happen. We don't have a whole lot of warning. A tornado could happen 30 miles away from where you are, and you never knew that it was a thing. So they're incredibly hard to get to, and so for me to be able to photograph and get to the place where I need to be at the moment that I need to be there, you have to have an understanding of the weather. You have to have an understanding of the forecasting and the meteorology that goes into it. So over the course of the last 10 years, that's what I've done. Is I basically worked with mentors and worked within the community to have a better understanding. So although I'm not a meteorologist, I think I got a pretty good understanding of severe weather forecasting. Without it, I'm not going to get to the place that I need to be. So let me tell you, I'm just going to start off with this picture. This is probably for me, the iconic tornado catastrophic damage photo. This happened in 2014, Pilger, Nebraska. It was on June 16th of this year. And I think this photo, for me, really is the type of image that, if I was to close my eyes at the beginning of all this and say, I need to capture an image that's going to tell a compelling story, this is the one that it would be. What makes it compelling for me is not all of the debris that's flying around in the air. That makes it interesting, all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's all about the people. And this isn't just some small town in Nebraska. This is the small town of Pilger, Nebraska, and we can see that on the water tower. And you're going to see throughout my images, I'm going to try to put a human face on some of these catastrophic events. When I started as a photographer, and I started down this path that I'm on right now, I had to find something that no one else was doing. When I started doing photography and I was photographing things like babies and weddings and French fries and pickles and all the things that professional photographers photograph, I realized very quickly that like a lot of industries, I was basically a commodity, and I was only able to sell marginally on the quality of my images. But let's face it, there's a million fantastic photographers out there. But I was really only able to sell based on price. And it wasn't until I realized that if you're doing something that no one else is doing, that's where you have a real strategic advantage. And it turns out that no one else in Canada was focusing on photographing and documenting severe weather events. And so in a very short period of time, after focusing on severe weather, sorry, I had to throw in Butler Buyers Hail Insurance. They sponsor me, and they're an awesome company out of Saskatoon. I think they're listening right now too. So, and when I started photographing and focusing on severe weather as a subject, it turns out that I know you're going to think this is crazy, Paul, but people in Canada are obsessed by the weather. No, it's true. It's true. We are. We're obsessed by the weather. And I mean, if you go into any small town, anywhere in the country, and you go to the cafe, right, downtown, and there's those 6 Polish guys that are sitting having coffee, what are they talking about? They're talking about the weather. And it turns out that by focusing on this as my subject matter, turns out people really cared about it. People really cared about it, and they always wanted to know more. And then when I branded myself as the tornado hunter, and I said, I'm going to even further focus my attention not just on severe weather, but I'm going to focus it down to specifically tornadoes and supercell thunderstorms. And now all of a sudden, people had I should just wait. I'm going to go back. This picture here, pretty cool shot. This is from the small town of Climax, Saskatchewan. Yeah, this was my last shot of the night. It was my last shot of the night at Climax, Saskatchewan. This on?
Hey, we didn't say we had a sense of humor.
But yeah, it turns out that people cared about this stuff, and so by really focusing my attention on supercells and tornadoes, I was able to sort of, capture a niche market of photography within Canada. Being, at the time, and there's a few other storm chasers out there now, but really at the time, the first dedicated professional, make my living doing storm chasing stuff, and I'll tell you the reaction was so incredible, and I'm super thrilled to be able to share these kinds of images. Something happened though in 2012 to change my view of storm chasing and the reason, or what's the raison d'etre, right? My reason for being a storm chaser. Up till June 26th of 2012, my reason for being out there was to take pictures, document storms and tornadoes and all those kind of things, tell some cool stories, get a little bit of an adrenaline rush and all those kind of things. Then I had a 6-day stretch in the middle of 2012 storm season that changed all that. And the first one happened on June 26th. There was a very well forecast weather event on June 26, 2012, where for a week ahead of time, we've been looking at the forecast, and I mean you look at all the parameters that we're looking for tornadoes, things like the wind profile, the moisture that was in the air, the jet stream, position of the jet stream, and all these important factors for tornado genesis. And they all had this like really tiny focused target over central Saskatchewan. And for about 7 or 8 days ahead of this event, through social media, through the regular media, we were talking up a storm. We were talking about how there was this really focused event that was going to happen on June 26th. And I can tell you that Environment Canada had 28 sunny with a 20% chance of showers. That was on the forecast. And so when you get some photographer talking about a tornado event 8 days out, and Environment Canada I can tell you that by 2 days before the event, I was getting hate mail now. I was being called all sorts of goofy names, and probably some of them warranted. But on the morning of June 26th, we woke up and we looked at the forecast and everything was coming together. We took a 4-hour drive. We got to a point out in the middle of a field in the middle of central Saskatchewan. We watched a supercell develop right in front of us. Supercell starts to develop a wall cloud and this incredible mesocyclone. And then within a few minutes, a funnel starts forming out of the bottom of this wall cloud. And now we've got this incredible wide cone, perfect cone shape, like right out of the movie Twister, tornado come down on the ground. And here's the moment in time where everything changed for me. We're live streaming as we're going along. We got 50,000 people around the world watching our live stream. We got a camera on the front of the truck, and we're showing this tornado developing live on the screen. And 50,000 people around the world are tuned in watching this event. I pick up the phone as we're watching this funnel about 3/4 of the way down to the ground. I pick up the phone. I phone Environment Canada, the Prairie Storm Prediction Center, the reporting line. And I said, "Hi, this is Greg Johnson. I'm a certified CanWarn storm spotter. I'm on Highway 363 west of Moose Jaw. We're heading east, and we've got this large..." And the guy on the other end of the line at Environment Canada says, "Greg, I'm going to stop you right there. We're watching your live stream right now. We just issued the tornado warning for the city of Moose Jaw." Now, as a storm chaser, as this goofy photographer guy, now being part of that sort of public safety, public alerting system where, imagine the worst job you can imagine, okay? The worst possible job in the world. You're a meteorologist for Environment Canada, okay? And you're trying to forecast the weather, and you're trying to send out a warning for Mortlach, Saskatchewan, and you're sitting in an office in Edmonton, Alberta, with no west-facing windows, and you're looking at a 2D radar image, right? And now you've got some eyeballs on the ground. This was an important moment for us. The second one happened, this picture is showing July 1st of 2012. So this is just a few days after the June 26th event. We're at Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan again. Saskatchewan that day experienced 850,000 lightning strikes in about a 12-hour period. This photo was taken at 9 p.m. at Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. This cell was dropping 200 strikes per minute. Okay? It was traveling east at 60 kilometers an hour, which means it was scheduled to hit the city of Regina, just down Highway 1, city of Regina at 10 p.m. on July 1st. Anybody know what's happening 10 p.m. on July 1st in the capital city of Saskatchewan? Yeah, Canada Day, fireworks. There's 30,000 people in Wascana. We make a phone call again to Environment Canada, reported what we were seeing, but then we made the phone call to the city of Regina. We said, "Here's the deal. You got this storm coming. This is a deadly situation. We got 200 lightning strikes per minute. If you don't fire the fireworks off right now or cancel them altogether, you're going to have a potentially deadly situation on your hands." They fired the fireworks off at 9:15. By 10 o'clock, when the storm arrived in Regina, the park was clear. So in 1 week, this desire for incredible photos and storytelling and all that kind of stuff, it was still important to me. It's still the way I make my living. But now there's this other component, this component which is about public safety. This particular photo, this is what I call the poopy pants photo. Okay, and I can tell you that the moment this photo was taken was the moment I developed Tornado Hunter approved underwear. All right? They come in brown and yellow if you don't. This was an incredible moment, obviously kind of scary, and I think you're saying that you're Tracy here. She's been struck by lightning, and so this probably bring back some PTSD with her, But for me, it was an incredible moment. We did get in the truck very quickly after this lightning strike. But for me, getting to see these incredible events. This is the largest hailstone, that I know of Those are inches on that tape measure. That's 8-inch hailstone, or roughly the size of the person's head sitting next to you. So if you can imagine those raining out of the sky. This happened in South Dakota in 2010. We've lost many windshields doing what we're doing. One of my favorite photos from Kansas in 2012. This was an EF4 tornado. This was, to my knowledge, one of the longest track tornado events in the U.S. in the last 50 years. It was on the ground for almost 200 miles in various forms. It would sort of dissipate and then reform, but never sort of met that classification of having dissipated for more than 5 minutes or whatever the classification is. So it was an incredible event. We followed it as it passed through. We followed it right from tornado genesis to its dissipation, and it was almost a 3-hour event for us. It was incredible. I use this photo a lot to demonstrate especially when I'm speaking to groups that want to learn a little bit more about tornadoes, how they form, and all these kind of things, school groups, that sort of thing. It's important to understand with a tornado, we think of Hollywood wants us to believe that if I'm looking at a tornado, if I'm in a tornado event or close to a tornado, that it would be very chaotic, lots of wind blowing in my face, debris flying around, and all those kind of things. But the reality is actually quite a bit different. The reality is that when we're at a distance, in this case a few hundred yards away from a tornado, the wind, the tornado and the thunderstorm are this low pressure system, and I always think of the tornado as being the heart of that low pressure system, or almost like a micro version of the larger low pressure system. And like any low pressure versus high pressure, our wind is going to be going, the wind movement is going to be going from the area of high pressure to the area of low pressure. And what we can see in this photo is our driver, Ricky, our safety officer with the flip-flops on, if you can see him right here. He's actually holding that door open, because as we're looking at the tornado, the wind's actually hitting us from behind. It's hitting us in the back. Okay, we refer to it as the inflow region of the tornado or inflow region of the storm, and everything's being pulled in towards the tornado. There's a flock of birds here. Watched this many times, and we watched it in this situation. Those birds cannot fly away from that funnel. Okay, they get sucked into that event. This idea, this myth that we hear about, it's raining frogs or it's raining fish or whatever, very real phenomenon. Okay, this micro low pressure system, which is the tornado, everything's being pulled in. As we're standing there experiencing it, the wind that's hitting us from behind and hitting me from behind is roughly in the, at this distance, 80 to 90 kilometer an hour range. So it's significant. Of course, as we get closer, that increases. I'm going to be showing you a video shortly, and in the video, you're going to see that there's a neat little scene where I'm kind of climbed out the side of the truck taking a picture from close range of a tornado, and you're actually going to see my hair being blown, but it's not being blown back. The actual hair is being pulled, and you'll be able to see in the video very clearly towards the tornado. So even though the car's moving, the wind is still faster than the vehicle's even going towards the tornado. Obviously, they come in various sizes and scales. Sometimes they're, a few meters wide or a few 100 meters wide, and sometimes they grow to be these incredible monster tornadoes. This particular picture was taken in Kansas in 2011. Yeah, 2011, I believe. And this one is captioned with what Chris, the guy in the picture here, this one's captioned with what he was actually saying at the moment this picture was taken. Start the truck! So it's a true story. The kid's 18 years old. He's from Montana, a good friend of mine. It was his first tornado he'd ever seen. 30 seconds after this picture was taken, he was on the floor in the back seat in the fetal position, and he was screaming, I'm not making this up, he was screaming, my mom was right! People say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Not true. Picture's worth $1,000. Okay? In my world, that's the truth. A picture like this, I'm going to make a few bucks on it. I have a media broker in the UK. We upload all of our images and video and stuff there, and then they sell it around the world to different media organizations. This one's worth a few bucks. Not a whole lot, but a few bucks. The reason is I'm still probably about 8 to 10 kilometers away from this tornado. This is a monster, mile-wide, EF4 tornado. As we get a little bit closer, though, now we can actually start to see these black areas that are in the picture, these heavy black areas. This is actually the Earth. This is the Earth being lifted off the ground. You can see individual things floating around. This one's worth probably $1,000 bucks. But as I get a little closer, now we're just a couple hundred yards away. Now you can actually see the asphalt being ripped off the highway. You can see the destruction in the trees over here on the right-hand side, individual things flying around, 50-gallon barrels. You're thinking to yourself, what is wrong with these four guys? Now this one has a much more emotion attached to it. A picture like this for me is worth even probably more than $1,000. Actually, before I get back to this one, I just want to step back a little bit. This photo is really, really important to pay attention to. This tornado is going to be featured in the video that I'm going to show you. The video you're going to see is not sped up. This is a real-time video. So what you're going to be seeing may feel like, this is how strong the wind speeds are in this video. And I don't even know if it was calculated correctly because this tornado didn't hit anything specific where maybe damage could be identified and that sort of thing. But when you watch the video, it's not sped up. And I want you to pay attention to these black areas and the position of the debris, because when you see it in the video, it's very clear that tornadoes do not spin around like this. This idea that they've got this sort of horizontal or, I guess, vertical axis that they're spinning on just is not the case. It's a corkscrew motion. And the vertical wind speeds, in my opinion, this is not a measured scientific thing, this is just a visual, visual evidence that suggests that the wind speeds that are going north or going up like this appear to be going as fast as anything that's spinning around this way. Now, I don't know if that's the same as what science tells us, but I'm just telling you what the physical video evidence is going to show you, and you're going to see it very clearly in the video of this particular tornado. And so I want you to think of that as, when I refer to it as a micro low pressure system or the heart of the low pressure system, I want you to imagine that and when you watch the actual video of the tornado and how it operates. This is another tornado that'll be featured in the video. This is the genesis of the largest tornado ever recorded on Earth. This was the Reno, Oklahoma tornado from May 31st of 2013. This is, as I said, the genesis. This is the early stages of the tornado. It was a multi-vortex tornado, meaning there was multiple small suction vortices within the parent circulation. And you're going to see that, again, very clearly in the video. You're going to watch the tornado separate into 3 funnels. You're going to see 2 funnels merge together as one, and you're going to see it doing this kind of thing. This was the tornado that killed Tim Samaras and Carl Young, tornado researchers from University of Colorado, and Tim's son Paul as well. It was probably the most studied tornado in history. There was Doppler on wheels trucks that surrounded the tornado. It was very slow moving, and it happened to happen within 50 miles of the heart of tornado research in Norman, Oklahoma. So it was a very, very well-studied event. I'm sure science is going to be looking at this tornado for the next 20 years. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to play the video. Let me just make sure I can... play the video, and then we'll talk about it when it's done.
I think they're only hearing when it comes here. So.
Oh, they're only hearing when it comes here. I'm online with the weather network right now. We're going live in about 10 seconds. It looks like this where we have tornado develop right now. Notice the upward motion here. Okay, let's follow it. Yeah, let's follow it, guys. Everybody in, everybody in. Always moving in the same direction. Like that was an individual suction vortice from the parent circulation. Keep going. It's over to the left. Okay. Get right up there, Sean. Get right up there. Let's go. Get right up there. Even though we're moving towards the tornado here, I want to notice how hard the wind is blowing my hair in towards the funnel. Vehicles underneath it. It's not a century. It's a powerful. Again, notice that upward motion. Oh my goodness. This is the Reno tornado. At this point, it was basically stationary. It was hardly moving, less than 5 miles an hour. And that's when we're in the air. Who's coming storm chasing?
Do you get free underwear?
Greg, you were talking to me earlier about the sense of the power involved in these storms. Quite remarkable.
It really is, and you know, we talk about this energy that it has, and we talk about looking at video and we're looking at photos, and we show up with these, and it's really hard to imagine if you haven't experienced it. You know, when we think about wind, right? Like, there's no way wind can just do this, but there's no other force on Earth like it, and it's pretty incredible. This is obviously a picture where I was standing at that fence in the video, and I was taking a picture. This is the Reno tornado, and this is my last photo of that event, and sort of pointed out the side of the window. And what happened that day is we're taking pictures. We were parked. We've got our exit strategy over here, driving south. For Stormchasers, driving south is always our exit strategy. Okay, the tornado is going to develop on the south side, generally on the south side or the southwest corner of that thunderstorm. And so, if you're north of the tornado, you're going to be in a rain and hail core. You're not going to see necessarily the tornado. So if you can see it, you're either east of it, west of it, or south of it. And in any of those situations, your outlet or safety valve is to drive south. And so we're standing here, we're back, and go back this one. We're standing here looking at this tornado, and it's basically not moving, and we can see on radar it's not moving. We visually see it's not moving. But then what happened is I don't know if you're familiar with the baseball joke. You guys are Blue Jays fans. Here, baseball joke. I couldn't understand why the baseball was getting bigger, and then it hit me. Right? Well, here all of a sudden we watch this thing start growing, and in my world, if you see it getting bigger, that means it's getting closer. So we get in the vehicle and we start heading south to get away from this, and we're looking at our GPS, and we're figuring out our route where we're going to go. And as I'm driving south, this thing's still getting bigger and bigger, and we're like, oh, this thing must be going 100 miles an hour at this point. It's gonna overtake us, but it wasn't going very fast. But what happened that day is that the tornado grew from just 100 yards wide or a few hundred yards wide, multiple vortex type tornado. It grew to be a 2.6 mile wide or just over 4 kilometer wide monster in just about a minute. Okay, so everybody who was in what we refer to as the safe zone, we're roughly a mile away, and that we would consider the safe zone. Tornadoes don't get that big. They're going very slow. We can drive away from it. All of a sudden, we've got this, in essence, the entire mesocyclone of that storm came down to the ground. And anybody who was in that area, ended up getting swallowed up. This is my last photo taken before we got caught. I'm just going to do this to you a little bit better. This is not actually the full tornado. We're actually in the tornado at this point. This is one of the small suction vortices within it. And some researchers believe that the suction vortices within a parent tornado can often have wind speeds that are much greater. And in fact, at the Reno tornado, the theory is that there were pockets of F3 damage within basically an F1 or an F2, giant tornado. These pockets of F3 damage, it's suspected that they're caused by these small suction vortices within the parent circulation. At this point, the vehicle in front of us stopped. Now, I would show you the video of that, but there's a lot of swearing, Paul, and so I didn't think it was appropriate. But the guy in front of us stops, and it turns out he was a friend of ours. And I couldn't understand why the guy stopped. Everyone knows you got to keep driving. There's a tornado right there. Like, why are you stopping? Turns out that a round bale had landed on his truck. His big 1,700-pound round bales had landed on his vehicle, and they were disabled. They couldn't go any further. We took the truck into the ditch, and then we had, out of the movie Twister, we had our, people would always ask me for years, is it like the movie Twister? And I would always say, Hollywood. And now, after my experience at Reno, I go, yeah, it's kind of just like the movie Twister. We're driving in this ditch, and you can imagine the screaming and yelling going on, and we're freaking out because we're getting hit by a tornado. And as we're driving through this ditch, a farm truck, a 60s-era farm truck, is helicoptering through the sky in front of us. Lands in the ditch that we're driving in. Ricky pulls the wheel to the right, narrowly avoids hitting the truck. All of our gear was sucked out of the back of the back, whatever you call it, the topper of the truck, in the back bed of the truck, and all the glass was destroyed and everything. So we went back the next day to find our stuff, and you can actually see our tire marks as the truck landed in front of us. Ricky pulled the wheel to the right, and we ended up back on track. And I can tell you that after the event, there was a real sense of, we also dodged this guy as it rolled across the road in front of us. There was a real sense of fear and a genuine genuinely being scared. And whenever anybody ever says, do you ever get scared doing this? And I can tell you that there's never been a storm chase I've been on where there hasn't been a level of fear. I guess fear is what keeps you alive in essence, right? But often the fear is not for my own personal safety. In fact, this is the only time I've ever felt, fear for my own personal safety. But as you saw in the video, when you watch somebody's house, the roof of their house flying up in the air, when you watch a small town in Nebraska somewhere getting hit, and you can actually hear the sound of that town being destroyed, there's genuine fear, because in many cases people are losing their lives, and at very least their lives are being changed significantly in a 30-second span of time. That's the thing that always was amazing to me, is how quick these events can happen. This was Pilger, Nebraska. This year was one of the very few times ever discussed or recorded, but definitely the first time ever recorded on film, two twin half-mile wide tornadoes on the ground beside each other. This was my National Geographic moment. This was the moment that, if I was to close my eyes in a fantasy state as a storm chaser and go, man, what would be my dream come true? And it would be, a moment in fact, I probably couldn't even have imagined such an event. But obviously the tragic part of this is the downside is the fact that the town of Pilger, in literally a 20-second span, if you can imagine that, the damage that you see from these events, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, it's over, but people's lives are completely changed. Also in April of this year, 2014, I mentioned to you that things changed for us back in 2012. There was a public safety component. One other thing, byproduct, and this is something that I don't want to be a part of, certainly don't want to ever be a part of, but seems to happen every season, 3 or 4 times, is we're always called upon to be first responders. We're the first on scene at really tragic events. I'm going to tell you the story of this tornado. This was a tornado in Arkansas in 2014. This was as it was crossing the Arkansas River. This was a mile-wide tornado that was on the ground. If you can imagine this, it's hard to even imagine putting this into perspective, but a mile-wide tornado on the ground for 128 kilometers, okay, through rural Arkansas. And it happened just before, at dusk, just before sunset. And so this is the early pictures of it. It was, fairly bright out. Across the Arkansas River, we followed it, and we're tracking its path, both on radar and visually whenever we can. It gets dark now. We can only see power flashes as the tornado hits power transformers, and we're using radar. We're using this visual of the power transformers blowing up. That's how we're tracking the tornado. And as I'm looking at it on the radar, I realize that it's heading towards the small town of Bologna, Arkansas. Now, I had been to Bologna 3 years prior in 2011. It was hit by an F4 tornado, or EF4 tornado. And I documented it. I document people's recovery, the town's recovery. I've been back to Bologna every year since to meet with people and see the people that we had documented that had lost their homes and their possessions. And now I'm watching this monster mile-wide tornado head towards this small town. And the National Weather Service in the United States issued that day what's called a PDS, or a particularly dangerous situation. So they issue a tornado warning, but then they put this caveat on it that says, if you're not underground, this is the language they use in the States. This is what I love. They speak in plain language. They say, if you're not underground, you die. Now, I don't know about you, but if I heard that warning, I'm getting underground. And when we arrived in Bologna, about 60 seconds, maybe 3 or 4 minutes after the tornado hit the town, it was late in the evening. It was dark. Now all the power's out. It's pitch black. And when we arrived in town, what we were greeted with was catastrophic damage, on par with anything I've ever seen at any F5 I've ever witnessed. These are well-built brick homes. This is brick wall here in entire neighborhoods that look like this. Okay? Now, I want you to imagine we're one of the very first vehicles there. There's no emergency personnel. Another town, half an hour away, Mayflower, had been hit. Emergency personnel had all gone there. There was no emergency personnel in Vilonia. We show up there. The only lights coming into that neighborhood are lights from our truck. People are coming out of the darkness. They're covered in head to toe in mud. Some of them, their clothes have been ripped off. Most of them don't have shoes on, and they're walking around in this environment. There's people with injuries. There was one lady who actually was impaled by a piece of wood. Really, really scary and dangerous stuff. We did first aid for about an hour, and when we had a critical mass of volunteers there doing first aid, then a number of us set out through the neighborhood doing search and rescue. Again, I didn't sign up for search and rescue. I'm not a trained searcher, but obviously, the human element, you're in that environment, that's what you're going to do. So we've got these little headlamps on, and we're walking around, and we're searching these neighborhoods, and we would go from sort of pile of rubble to pile of rubble, and we're calling out. We say, is anybody there? Can you hear me? If you can hear me. And remember, it's completely pitch black out there. And here's the eerie thing. When the alarm gets cut off at the house, there's that beep, beep going on. So all you can hear in the distance is all these little kind of beacons going off. And every once in a while, depending on the property you get to, there's a copper pipe coming out of the concrete, and it's got water spilling out of it. And it's just a really eerie feeling, and there's no other real sounds going on. So we're calling out. We say, is anybody there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? And if there was no response back, maybe we call out again. And once we felt comfortable that, there was nobody that we could help there, we would move on to the next property. About 2 o'clock in the morning, after a couple of hours of searching around, we came upon this property. And I was actually on the other side of the road. Ricky was at this one, and he calls out. He hears a response back. And so he calls out again, and he hears a response back, and we sort of figure out where under this pile of rubble we can hear the sound coming from. And we called a bunch of people over, and now we got I think there was probably 14 or 15 of us there. And we spend now the next, probably 45 minutes or an hour by hand pulling all of this debris and rubble off until we got down to the door in the floor. Got down to this storm cellar door. And you see, not everybody first of all, nobody in this community has a basement. And not everybody has a storm shelter. It's not code. You're not required to have a storm shelter. But if you don't have one, you know who in your neighborhood does. You have a plan, right? You know that if there's a tornado warning, I'm going over to the neighbor's house. And so we get down to this door in the floor. It gets opened up. And if you can imagine that in this little storm shelter, there's 3 families in there, including a little infant. And I want you to imagine it's 4 o'clock in the morning. You've been trapped in there for 5.5 hours. And I want you to imagine 4 feet wide, 6 feet deep, and you got, 8 people in there. Now, I don't know about your sense of confined spaces. This is my ultimate fear right there. And if you can see the look on their face when I imagine they're probably telling the same story. Going, if you would have seen the look on their face, But it was a moment that, obviously we don't sign up for it. I hope I never get to experience that again. But certainly as a moment in time in my life scrapbook, if you will, it was one of those moments that I'm sure Ricky and I and anybody who was there that day would never forget. So it was a pretty incredible moment. For me, though, it's the documenting and reporting. I show up at these events, and I know that it seems like there would be a creep factor 9 going on, right? Showing up with a camera, and people's homes are destroyed, et cetera. I've never had somebody say to me, "Why are you taking pictures?" In fact, the opposite's true. I'll be at these events. This was actually in Joplin, Missouri. This was the deadliest tornado in the United States in about 60 years, and this was in 2011. And if you can imagine, 1.5 miles wide and 25 miles ground distance, this tornado ripped this swath, and it was a worst case scenario for the community of Joplin, because this wasn't like the Edmonton tornado where the tornado sort of skirted the outside of town. This was a direct 1.5-mile swath through the heart of a fairly populous city, close to 100,000 people. And so for 25 miles, the scene looked like this. And the really incredible, scary part about this is that everything you see here took about 45 seconds. Tornado was moving at a ground speed of 60 miles an hour. It was, roughly a mile wide. The damage path was about 1.5 miles wide. But it was 60 seconds, 45 seconds in any given location. Like just an incredible amount of energy that gets displaced over such a short period of time. But one thing you're going to notice about all these pictures is the people, the people that are in them, and the fact that they're, you would think that it would be chaotic. This is moments after the tornado. You think it'd be chaotic, but it's not. People are just in a sense of shock. It's incredibly calm and peaceful there. There's no chaos happening. Nobody's running around shouting and screaming. There's no sirens going off. People are literally just in a state of, absolute shock. Within every tragedy, though, I have to tell you, there's always a little bit of laughter, and maybe sometimes it's nervous laughter, but you gotta keep things in perspective, because you can imagine working in this environment, and I'm not talking about myself working in this environment. I'm talking about the people that are doing the search and rescue and the emergency responders and everything like that. This could become very overwhelming. We pulled into Joplin. This is the hospital, St. Joe's, that got completely destroyed. It's now been demolished. We pulled into a little parking lot on the other side of the road from there, and this is where we're going to set up our home base, and then we're going to go out and start shooting. And as we pulled into the parking lot, my heart sank, and I was like, "Oh my God, guys, there's a leg over there. Oh my gosh, there's a foot. There's an arm." Turns out we were in the parking lot of a prosthetics clinic. It was across the road from the hospital and scattered all around the area because this 2-story building was completely destroyed. As you can see, brick construction, and there was all of these prosthetic legs and limbs and everything hanging around. And so we had our moment of sort of like nervous laughter, but anyway, this is Joplin. But what's incredible about it is that was Joplin. This is Moore, Oklahoma. And what's amazing is how similar the destruction looks. And when you've been to as many of these as I have, what's amazing and what's shocking to me is I could put all these pictures in one folder and I could mix them up and say, this one's Joplin and that one's Moore, and nobody would know the difference. In fact, given enough time, I'm probably going to forget which one is which, because they're so similar in what you see. Found this guy's dad trapped under this pile of rubble, alive. He was there was a big captain's chair, big wooden captain's chair, and he was in that sort of space underneath that chair as the house collapsed around him. Vehicles destroyed. This is an SUV, and for me, as I said earlier, although I started as doing documenting, telling stories, and writing for different organizations, the ability to be in that place and be able to help, and whether it's Environment Canada or reporting to the National Weather Service or any of these kind of things, that's the really special parts about what I get to do. Finally, back to the first photo that we looked at. This is the town of Pilger, and again, I really think that this tells that incredible story. And when you see this happen in real time, and you see the effect that it has on people's lives, it can be so catastrophic. And I'm sure it's no different if somebody was within a hurricane or their house has been lost to a flood or anything like that. But I find it very emotional to talk about, and being able to witness it, and I feel very lucky for that experience. The last photo I'll show you, this was the shot that I took of the air ambulance and the hospital in the background at the Joplin tornado. graced the cover of a lot of newspapers the morning after the tornado hit, especially across Canada. And being able to be a storyteller and to share these stories and images throughout a career of photography, especially with a group of people that care about it, this is pretty interesting stuff, because I think it does lend a bit of a different perspective than just a number of stats on a piece of paper. I think it sort of puts a human face on it, and that's what I'm really proud to do. So with that, I guess I'll just leave that one up there. Thank you very much. And I guess now I guess we can take some questions, Paul.
Hopefully just yet. Can I start? The advice saying get underground or you'll die.
Yeah.
There's very few Americans who have a place to go underground.
Yeah.
Whatever. Again, maybe in China and elsewhere, there's more people with basements, so you can get to some safe spot in Canada.
Well, with specifically with a group like this, and talking about our discussion earlier about building codes and things like this. One thing that's really interesting to note is that in Joplin, very few people had a place to go. Okay, and as you saw, I mean the destruction was complete. There was well-built brick homes that all that was left was a concrete slab. Even in that environment, over the course of the last 3 years, going back to Joplin every year for the anniversary and getting a chance to meet and interview people, I've met dozens of people who survived the worst tornado in history by being on the main floor bathroom. Okay, so this idea that being in the main floor bathroom, is a survivable location, I believe is a real thing. You've got a small footprint room within a house. Generally with pipes and lots of walls per square foot, and people survive. If I go back through some of these photos of Joplin, you'll see that entire houses are destroyed, but parts of them are still left standing. Right? It might be catastrophic. There's a concrete slab here, but on some of them there are places that are still left standing. And so even though it's as bad as it can be, if you're in that main floor bathroom, chances are you're going to survive. Another testament to that, the Arkansas tornado at Bologna, Arkansas, when we were doing first aid, we were sitting on the side of the road, we had a little first aid station set up. This dad shows up, and he's got a cut on his arm here, and we're doing first aid to him, but I can tell that he's in shock. And so, I'm just trying to talk to him. And the whole time I'm talking to him, he's got two little girls with him. And the one little girl's talking, I got puke in my hair. Talking about how her sister puked all over her. And at first it was kind of, funny a little bit. But then I found out their story. The dad told me that they were sort of not paying attention to the tornado warning. Tornado warnings happen all the time, don't they? So he gets a text message from a friend that says, it's coming your way. It's all the text message. It's coming your way. He takes the two little girls, throws them in the bathtub, because they have no storm shelter, throws them in the bathtub, climbs in on top of them. When the tornado passed over, when it was done, the bathtub was out in the street. And they survived. But I think it's, again, just that testament that even if you don't have that storm shelter, that bathroom is a very survivable location.
We've been doing some work with the new building codes for more. So the objective of that code, magnitude 2, the winds from magnitude 2 event, would not destroy the home. So we're chatting in terms of the footprint. Even when the tornado can be larger in some parts of the tornado, quite a few parts of the tornado are still magnitude 2 or less.
Right, and as you get out to the outer circulation, the wind speeds are a little bit less.
But the cost to do that is not zero. You have to spend some money up front to put in the protection down the road.
Well, I think they probably will in more, considering that they've had 3 F5 events in the last 15 years. So pretty scary stuff there. And I think I'll tell you having witnessed the Reno tornado, which happened, for those of you who are unaware, The Moore, Oklahoma EF5 in 2013 happened on May 20th. There were a number of school children that were killed that day. It took a very similar path to the previous F5 that had hit Moore. And so in Oklahoma City and the suburbs, there was this heightened sense of tornado awareness, right? Tornado fear, because they'd just been hit by this. I believe somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 buildings that were destroyed or somehow damaged. I mean, that's a huge number. So then the El Reno tornado hits, and the National Weather Service issues a particularly dangerous situation warning. And the El Reno tornado although it was moving slowly, was moving directly for downtown Oklahoma City. News reports started filtering in about, this catastrophic, 2-mile wide tornado moving towards the city of Oklahoma. Within minutes, the interstate highways became traffic jams because people were trying to flee the city rather than get underground. Everybody who was killed in the El Reno tornado was in a vehicle. Okay? When that tornado crossed the interstate, that's where people got killed. And so it's a real testament to this idea that, don't try to get in your car, especially in an urban area, don't try to get in your car and run away from it. Get underground. You just got to get underground to get to safety. Yes.
One of the stories that we tell came out of Hurricane Andrew, and the hurricane went across the state of Florida, and there was a highway. On this one side, community's gone. The other side of the highway, standing, and the difference was all building code and building code enforcement. I look at your pictures, and it's all gone. So is there one town, have you gone to towns and went, oh crap, they're gone? There's no way they could have survived that. And you drive up and they're still there? Or is it always and everywhere? Is there difference in states? Is there difference in cities? Preparedness?
Remember, this is anecdotal, okay? So this is not scientific. This is just anecdotal, my own personal observations. I believe when you look at what happened, the hospital, right? It was definitely built as a well-built structure. It may not have come down during the tornado, but it was completely destroyed. I think there's a difference and a distinction to be made between EF5 winds and EF5 damage, and EF4 and high EF4, and say that EF0, EF1, EF2 range. Those are absolutely, there's no excuse, survivable events. That's where the work of an organization like yours is going to save lives, it's going to save property, it's going to save, the economics of it, right? Once you get up to that EF5 level, I think what we're talking about is survive. I don't think there's a whole lot of property reclamation that's going to be going on. I just don't. I can't even imagine in the best building code situation. I can't imagine that there's property reclamation going on in those EF5 winds. Again, that's just anecdotal. Pilger, Nebraska, for example, this year, the picture with the water tower. This was an old town. This was a town that was built, the turn of the last century. It was all wooden structures. The Three Little Pigs. These were wooden houses. They literally were. It was like blowing apart a little matchstick houses. There was nothing left. And so, what do you do on those historical properties? How do you building code changes don't affect those at all? So, are there differences? I'm sure there are. Generally, though, when I show up at these really catastrophic events, Greensburg, Kansas, another one, literally every property in town was gone. It was an older town, though. So I don't know if that's answering your question directly, but I was telling Paul a story about at Moore, which was an EF5 event. I do have a picture of a house. It's a multi-million-dollar mansion, but it's in the path of this tornado. And there's all the homes around it are completely destroyed, and it suffered relatively little damage. Is that a result of code, or is it a result of maybe the maybe the tornado happened to dissipate during a period of time, or they're not perfect, right, in their shapes and their path and all those kind of things. So I'm assuming that code had something to do with it, but I don't really know.
I was just thinking of the behavior of the people in the cars. I mean, in some cases, you're going in towards this thing, you can see it. If it was me, I'd be doing a three-pointer and going the other direction, but some of these people seem to just keep driving towards.
Well, in my pictures, the people you see that are in vehicles, those are all storm chasers.
So there's a reason.
There's an excuse. I don't know if there's a reason, but there's definitely an excuse. The reality is, the closer we get, if you consider Norman, Oklahoma as the epicenter, the closer we get, the more of that, what we refer to as chaser convergence, the more of that you see. The farther away you get from Norman, the less of that you see. It can be a bit of a problem down in Oklahoma because a lot of them, as you can even see in the pictures, they're not driving 4 to 5 vehicles. I mean, ours has rollover protection. We got bulletproof vehicle. The safety gear of the yin yang. Some of them are driving, the Chevy Cruze, and I don't begrudge people for being out there. I get it. I understand how incredible it is. But at the same time, if you don't have the education, I guess, or like the sort of storm knowledge, if you don't have the right radar technology. I mean, I'm using satellite radar. I'm not dependent on cell technology. We've got the right tools. If you don't have the right tools, it's like let's try to hammer a nail with a screwdriver.
Don't try this at home.
Well, I guess I have a hard time saying that because I do. So
speaking of those tools, how have you seen that evolve? Because that's the other component, is that warning system that you were talking about being part of. How has that progressed or is progressing?
Well, I'm gonna. I don't know if everybody in the room is aware of it, but for the last 6 years, I've been on this soapbox. Right? Any media organization that's willing to interview me, I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna wave a red flag at Environment Canada and at the federal government and say, we need better, and then, there's a list of X, Y, A, B, C, all the way through to X, Y, and Z of what we need to become even close to the warning system that they have down in the United States, okay? I'm so thrilled because this year 2 incredible things have happened. Number one, all the provinces now have got together. They're working with the feds on a model that's loosely based around the model that they built in Alberta on a public alerting system. Okay, not just for tornadoes.
Built in Alberta 25 years ago.
25 years ago, yeah. And so they're working on this national program to have a better way to. Up till now, Environment Canada has had a pull method. They post their information, and broadcasters and public are required to pull the information from Environment Canada and then give it out to the public. We're now working towards this system where they're going to push the information out to the public through broadcasting and all the rest of it. So that's a good thing. And then the other thing that recently happened, actually this week, is the announcement of, I believe, $134 million to upgrade the radar technology across Canada, specifically in the prairies in southern Ontario, where we expect to see tornadoes happen on a regular basis. So those are both great steps, but although they're good steps, I still always caution, I'm still going to be on the soapbox until it happens, that this isn't just a technology issue. It's a communications issue. If the communication to the public about severe weather, whether it's education, whether it's creating of a volunteer network like Skywarn, like they have in the United States, whether it's pushing information out to the public during severe weather events, it's that communication where the policy needs to really be more robust and needs to change, in my opinion. The technology improvement's great, but there has to be that other communication piece that goes along with it. Yes.
Have you seen a lot of changes in terms of your ability to detect and predict severe weather because of social media and different people on the ground? In the last couple of years, obviously, it's been
to a degree. Okay, to a degree, where the benefit comes from is that in the past, if an event happens, so let's say a tornado happened in rural Kansas or frankly rural Saskatchewan somewhere, we would find out about it posthumously, right? We'd find about it afterwards. We hear anecdotal evidence about it. Now we hear it's still after the fact generally, but or maybe during the event, but that's where social media has some value. From a forecasting standpoint, I mean, the last 15 years have seen this meteoric change in our ability to forecast severe weather. The weather models are much better today than they were 15, 20 years ago. But just the communications technology allows us to get that information out better. Here's a couple of examples. You saw in the video, it was a brief thing. I should have included a photo of it. But July 3rd, 2012, Saskatchewan, very well forecast tornado day. I mean, we were looking at the models. Oh my God, this is going to be epic-tacular, you know. And we drove 2.5 miles outside of Regina. We're out in this field somewhere. We're watching two supercells, one on radar because it's west of us, but it looked really good. And there's one that was right above us. And I don't know if you noticed it in the video. It may be the only time ever recorded. It's the only time I've ever seen it. But somebody in our group went, "Holy crap, look above us." And we looked up, and the camera angle that we got is the tornado like this. And we can actually see into the donut hole of the tornado. And I don't know if you've ever seen that hole inside of a tornado, but there it is above us. Imagine that we can drive out in the middle of the field somewhere and have a tornado develop above us. That's incredible forecasting. The other one was El Reno. Imagine there was thousands of people. People were at that event from Japan. People are at that event from Germany and Netherlands. We woke up in a hotel room the morning of the El Reno tornado. We woke up in a hotel room in El Reno. Because 24 hours beforehand, we looked at all the model data and went, well, if there's going to be a tornado, I mean, this is the place. We woke up in a hotel room there. We literally drove 20 miles during a storm chase day like that and witnessed the largest tornado ever recorded. So the forecasting is fantastic today, in my opinion. You had a question, Joel?
Yeah, I was watching like what you do with your photos, and you got expensive camera gear. You say you got bulletproof trucks and the radar. You fund all that through selling these photos, or do you get some external funding as well?
No external funding. This is a private business. Like this is a business enterprise. So I've got seeding. So I'm going to use a farming analogy. I got seeding in the springtime, and my seeding is I'm going out and I'm chasing storms and I'm spending a whole bunch of money on gas and hotels and food, and we're chasing storms and we're capturing images and video. And then the fall rolls around. Now I'm going to start harvesting. And through speaking engagements, through working with educational programs, our TV show that we have on CMT Canada, fall, we harvest all that information that we've collected and we turn that into generating it. So it's absolutely private business. There's no external funding at all. But if you happen to know of anybody who's interested in funding this externally, I'd be happy to talk to them. And that's where I'm going to bring up again my friends in Saskatoon at Butler Byers Hail Insurance. We do have some sponsors, and organizations like Butler Byers are fantastic for us. I mean, they do give us money, and they allow us to do the things that we do. And for me, dealing with people always ask me about the insurance thing, right? Because at first blush, I look like the least insurable guy on the planet, right? But here's the reality. If you are going to be anywhere near a tornado, wouldn't you really like to be in my truck? Right? We've got safety gear. We got knowledge. We got radar. I know what direction it's going. I don't smoke. Right? I don't smoke. I got good genes, right? Like nobody in my family has any of them. Like grandfather died at 96. He had a full head of hair, right? Like I got good genes. Like I may be the most insurable guy in Canada. I don't know, but the point is that I think that trying to and I think the insurance industry, I mean, has to do these kind of things, but they put you in a category or in a block, and they say, you have risky behavior, you don't. I don't do intravenous drugs, right? And I don't, I think, have all that risky behavior. I'm not a serial adrenaline junkie. I'm not jumping off, jumping out of airplanes and all that kind of stuff. I think that what the risks that we take are calculated, and like my good friend Rick Hansen says, there's a difference between taking risks and being reckless. And I don't think we do anything that's really reckless.
I know some of your competitors, they advertise to the rest of us to go on a storm chasing vacation. Come with us in our truck. How do you view those?
Well, you know what? I have many good friends. Actually, one of my good friends from Toronto here, George Coronas, shows Angry Planet on OLN. George leads a storm chase tour every spring for a company called Cloud9 Tours. I have other friends, Marcus Gutierrez and Brandon Ivey have a company as well. These are A, meteorologists, B, they're field experienced, understand it, witness many of them. They take all the safety precautions you can imagine, and frankly, they're a ton of fun. And I don't know anybody who's ever gone on a storm chase vacation who hasn't really enjoyed it. Now, having said that, this is not a plug because I don't do them. I don't offer them, but I get it why people would want to go. Most of their customers, frankly, come from overseas. The Brazilians, the Japanese, the Dutch. The Dutch are goofy for it, by the way. There's no people on the planet goofier for tornadoes than the Dutch. The Germans, like all over Europe, they come over and they fill up these tour vans and they drive around the U.S. plains and into the Canadian plains actually. And they love it. Like, I mean, it is a ton of fun. You should actually do it. You should come for a ride along. You actually want to now, don't you? I can tell. I can see the look in his eyes. He's like, yeah, okay, I kind of do.
Yeah. Have you ever done any work with water spouts?
You know, we've talked about it. Water spouts are actually fairly predictable weather events. Like they're probably more predictable in many cases than tornadoes are. The problem is they're over water, and so I'm jet skiing into a water spout event. So the logistics are certainly a lot more difficult than they are ground based. But yeah, we've talked about it. Actually, we're thinking about it. It's actually on our discussion list for our TV show. Is maybe possibility of heading to Florida and doing some water spout, intercepts. Hopefully, and that's usually sort of an August event kind of thing. So.
Do you have any association with prairie storm chasers?
Just that I know them on social media. And
yeah.
You met them, within, different circles and stuff like that, but no sort of formal affiliation with them at all. Yeah.
Just going through the record of Canadian tornadoes that goes back more than 100 years, actually. So, most of the ones in the record are individual tornadoes, occasionally two tornadoes happening in an event. The Americans seem to have more of these outbursts where you get a whole bunch in the same day, but out of the same event. The Canadian tornadoes occur.
Well, I've actually experienced a few of those. If you want to call them swarms, or in tornado language, we're going to say outbreak. Okay. Typically, I think the National Weather Service refers to an outbreak as any event where there's more than 15. I think 15 is their magic number. I could be wrong there. You might actually know better than I would on that. But I think 15 is kind of their magic number. In Canada, we experienced those same things. There was the super outbreak in 73, 74. What was it? Can't remember which year it was. 73 or 74. Anybody know? Anyway, that was Southern Ontario. That was that Windsor to London corridor. July 17th, 2012, Saskatchewan had 8 in a 2-hour span. June 15th, 2014, Saskatchewan had a day where there was like 30 tornadoes. So we do get them. Our population density, we don't get them reported. We don't get them, they're not impacting communities like they would. The big event in U.S. history was April 27th, 2011. It's an event that it's the outlier, right? That outlier event in 2011 where there was, I think it was close to 300 tornadoes in the one day. 19 different states were impacted. April 2011, 800 tornadoes in the month. The previous highest April was something like 200. So that April 2011 was this outlier time. And I don't know that we know the reason for that. Can we expect it in Canada? Sure, there's gonna be these outlier events. They're gonna happen. Edmonton was an outlier event because typically northern Alberta is gonna get tornadoes from time to time, but they're usually fairly small events. They're fairly short-lived. Edmonton was this, Oklahoma-style, monster tornado, and it killed 27 people. There was an outlier event in 1912 in Regina. In today's terms, it was $1 billion disaster. It went right through the heart of downtown Regina. Killed 28 people. So they do happen for sure. But I'm going to say the same thing to this group that I'm going to say to a group of school kids is that as scary as they can be, the reality is most of us are never even going to witness one in our entire lives. They're just incredibly rare events, and that's what makes them so, I think, compelling and interesting is that we don't necessarily know why one supercell with seemingly exact same conditions, one supercell is going to produce a tornado, and the one, 10 miles away with exact same atmospheric conditions doesn't produce a tornado, And that's the holy grail, I think, of tornado research is understanding what's that missing ingredient, what's that missing factor that makes that all worthwhile. And I know that is the specific research goal of the Vortex project, is to understand what is that missing thing that makes one storm produce a tornado and the other one doesn't.
Is there any chance a drone will be able to be deployed in a tornado?
Well, there have been some groups that have tried to do it. It's actually illegal. There was a group last year that flew a drone, frankly, just over a damage path, posted a video on YouTube and was fined $10,000 by the FAA for flying an unlicensed drone in that environment. So the FAA has a lot of rules around flying unmanned vehicles, actually flying any vehicles, specifically, in that environment. So is it possible? Sure. However, if I'm thinking about just aerodynamics and, being able to stabilize and fly any kind of vehicle into winds that frankly are in excess of 400 kilometers an hour, and not just on that single plane, right? We're talking that corkscrew motion. I might be fun to watch, actually. Fly a big drone into that. Fun to see how it reacts.
I actually had a presenter here who had flown with NOAA through a hurricane.
Oh, Hurricane Hunter.
Yeah. Again, that's it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, that's right.
The rules for drones are different in Canada, as I understand. So it would be legal in Canada.
Oh, really? Interesting.
But
that's good to know.
Yeah, they're coming down harder on the researchers. Okay, with that, I think we need to draw things to a close. Can you join me in thanking Greg Johnson? Perfect. Great. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. Again, we promised you something different to start off this year. I think next month is Ghislaine McClure, going to come from McGill and talk about earthquakes in Montreal. Have I got the right ones for next time? Yes. So watch for Ghislaine's presentation on February 20, which is a Friday. Thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Greg.